If you struggle with making calls, you are going to want to listen to this story that Angela shares. Angela is a new mortgage broker, hasn't been in business that long, but when she came for previously, she was a paramedic. And when she got in this business, she was very nervous to make calls. In fact, on her very first call, she forgot her own email address. I know, crazy, right? And today, fast forward to now, she's absolutely crushing calls and her pipeline has exploded. And it's really a story of her journey and what she's learned along the way. It's very inspiring. I think you're going to love this conversation and pick up some nuggets from it. Hey, I'm Scott Beckford. This is the I Love Mortgage Brokering podcast. And each week we bring you episodes to help inspire you, inform you, and give you things that you can copy in your mortgage business. And before I jump into this, I want to give a shout out to Ownwell. Ownwell is an amazing tool for you to use to nurture your database and find deals in your database. One of their most recent features allows you to, it basically sorts your database by opportunities, whether they're, because it does the calculations on the penalties and if it makes sense for them to find, to get a new mortgage. And it's been working like crazy for brokers to find deals that they didn't even know that they had. Check them out at ownwell.ca/Scott and check out this episode with Angela. Hey, Angela, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, so tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got in the mortgage biz.
So a few years ago, I had a friend of mine mention that I'd be a good realtor. And I didn't think...
And you didn't listen to them? No, just kidding.
I kind of filed it away in the things that were a no for me, but it just got my brain working and I kind of found my way to the mortgage side of things. I'm more analytical. And what I like about the mortgage business is that it's like there's a lot more problem solving. There's a lot more walking the path beside people. And that's what I really, really attracted me to the business. So, and being able to grow those relationships.
Right. Yeah. I mean, not that there's not problem solving as a real estate agent, but this is a uniquely, it's different for sure. I remember I met a realtor once who was a realtor for 25 years. And he said to me, "Oh, I'm becoming a mortgage broker. And I don't take this the wrong way, but it seems to me what you do is way easier than what I do." And I'm like, dude, like and then a year later, he's like, "Oh my God, this is way harder than I thought."
That's funny. Yeah. So, it's like apples and oranges.
It's different.
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah. And you can be good at one, but like, if I became a realtor tomorrow, I would have a lot to learn. Yeah. I know how to make, there's a lot of stuff I don't know how to do. And so I just thought it was a funny statement. Okay. So you decided to go on the mortgage broker path. What were you doing before?
I was a paramedic for 9 years.
Me too.
I know. That's funny. I related to you when I saw your podcast last, but, and I loved being a paramedic. There's just no longevity in that business. Trying to do it and keep your sanity and, avoid PTSD and so I had to think long and hard about when I did the career shift about what I truly wanted from my life. And I know the one thing was that I loved helping people. I've always helped people, and the mortgage side of things might not seem like a natural progression and the first thing you think of when you think of helping people, but for me, I got some advice from a mortgage broker like 15 years ago, and I will carry it with me. As she helped, I was just out of a relationship. She helped kind of get me back on track. And I didn't even, at the time, wasn't even purchasing a house. She took 10 minutes. It was a conversation, but it deeply impacted. Right. So that's ultimately kind of what pushed me this direction.
What pushed you down into that path? Okay, that's very cool. And yeah, have you ever seen that movie? There's a movie out called Code 3 with Dwight from The Office. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't, but I love that.
It's on Netflix. It's really good. And I found that this was the most accurate paramedic movie I've ever seen. But the only thing I'd say is not accurate is the doctor was a total jerk. And I've met jerk doctors, but I haven't, for the most part, I didn't find this. I found the staff were just, burnt out as much as paramedics were. They weren't assholes. They were just, everybody was stressed because it was busy, right?
Yeah.
But I'd say go watch it when you get a chance. So, okay, you paramedic, got into the mortgage business. And so what year was that? How long ago?
August of last year is when I officially became a mortgage broker.
And so then walk me through since August, what's been kind of working for you? There's been doing some, to help you get your business going.
So I got licensed and I joined Bricks. And to me, um, I'd heard the horror stories about people not having the support in the early days of their career. And I knew, at this point in my life, like if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be all in. So I'd heard about Bricks. I had people that longtime friends that have been mortgage brokers are mortgage brokers, and they spoke so highly of it. So I knew naturally it was a perfect fit. So I came on board and immediately overwhelmed by how much there is to know.
There's a lot to learn. It's a whole there's a lot to learn for sure.
Oh yeah, like it was more than I could have even imagined. You come out of the course, kind of feel prepared. Nope, throw all of that out the window and start over, to a degree, right?
To a degree, yeah.
Yeah, and so I, kind of came into it. One of the things that I was learning about building a referral-based business, I am not a salesperson. At all. The second I don't have a poker face, people see right through that. So for me, I want the referral-based business really attracted me because it really came down to building genuine relationships and a mutually beneficial relationship. And I, so kind of got started, tried to do it my way in the beginning. Mostly because it was, calling people, stepping outside my comfort zone in a totally new career, totally new. Like I don't have a background in real estate at all. Besides that one conversation with a mortgage broker years ago and a few realtor friends, and other than, purchases, that's all I knew. Right. So, it was, so much to learn and so much to navigate. And there is kind of a structure to the way that they coach you on kind of building things. And, there's so much resources. Yeah. I guess I went from trying to do it my way in the beginning and struggling and literally floundering to making the decision that if I'm going to do this and be all in, I'm all in. Let's do it. Let's just embrace the uncomfortableness of it all. And so that was like, I'd say the pivotal moment.
Yeah. I remember you saying to me something about because we'd get you to go, build a list of real estate agents, get in front of them. And you were like, I don't think it's going to work. And then you remember you saying, you're like, it's actually working. And you were uncomfortable too, right? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I remember, I tried to do everything I could not to call people. I would, I'd get on, we do Game of Phones. I would show up and I think my first 3 Game of Phones, I DM'd because I was so nervous of having this conversation. Somebody's going to ask me a hard question. I literally printed out every objection, comeback, and I literally had them laid out in front of me on the table. And I didn't even look at them once, not even one time. So I think
but it probably gave you some comfort though, knowing that you could look if you needed to.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it was like my 4th Game of Phones where I'm going to do 3 calls today. And so I did the first one. I actually write down at the time I was writing down like the first couple of sentences just so I can, kind of get that out and I'm not stumbling over, immediately. And then, then you just go with the flow. And I find after the first, I'd say, that first day I was sweating. I was at the end of that first call, the realtor asked me my email and I couldn't remember my email. Like,
that's very honest and vulnerable of you to share. You're like,
I had to literally admit that this is embarrassing. I'm going to have to look it up. And my email is so simple. That's even more embarrassing. So, but we had a good laugh at it and I laughed at myself and there was that immediate kind of like camaraderie. And this isn't like, I don't know what that was to me, like the worst thing that could have happened on that first call. And it really wasn't that bad, So I think it was good that happened early on. Because that really
but even more important is good that because it's going to happen, you're going to have these awkward interactions, but it's more important that you didn't take it personally, and you were like, okay, you laughed it off and moved on, right? Like
Totally.
you have a choice at that moment. People go, oh my gosh, this was, and they go, I'm so embarrassed. Or you could just go, everybody makes mistakes, and or it slips up, but I just keep learning. So fast forward to today. So like how now, like I guess, do you have any idea of how many leads you've generated since, and like maybe just get an idea on that?
I tried to go through and reorganize because I had them, my own personal ones and then ones that I've received from realtors. I would say it's about 65 to 70 now. And a lot of those aren't necessarily leads that are right now leads. They're leads I've had a conversation with,
Right.
and maybe their situation is now the follow up is 3 or 6 months down the road. Um, so I'd say out of that, like probably 50 solid ones. So
Okay, so 50 solid leads. And then what do you have, if you don't mind me, do you know what you have in your pipeline, pre-approvals and stuff? Like how's that looking right now? Any idea?
I have 6 pre-approvals out shopping right now. I'm waiting on docs on 4 other applications. And then I had a closing this week. So it's, and then I have like a few leads that are in that initial stages of,
Right.
do they want to
And
dive
how many
in?
closings have you had? Do you mind sharing
4,
that? How many closings you've
4
had?
right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
4. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Amazing. And so, yeah. And then as you said to me before turning on the recorder, you're getting a lot of leads right now coming in, and it's just a matter of like working through them, and the thing is, when you're new, anybody listening, this, but if you're not, it just takes you more time. There's
yeah.
just, you're going to be slower at it than somebody who's done lots of them. Right. So it's part of that but there's lots of learning that can happen. And so that's amazing. So if you don't mind, so that's like, I've been impressed with like how many calls now, like how does making calls now feel for you compared to when you started?
There is no comparison. Like it's night and day. Now if I'm going to, I make a list of calls that I'm going to do. Some of them are like clients or referral partners that I haven't talked to in a while, but usually I have 10 at least cold contacts or semi-warm, even through social that I call. And so it's an intro call. Like I'm calling to, introduce myself and share what I'm about, share why I'm calling, and then ultimately ask for the meeting. But it's, and I forgot whatever question you asked me.
No, it's like I just asked how does it feel now compared to when you started? Because of the first one, you said you sent DMs because you were nervous, and then first call you forget. Next, when you do make your first call, you forget your email address. And I just what I want to do is juxtaposed with multiple months of putting in that effort. What is it like? How does it feel for you now when you get a list of 10 people or whatever you're going to call?
It's a huge difference. In the beginning, it's probably the number one stress of getting this business started. And now doing calls is like, I feel like I'm okay with wherever the call goes, however the outcome is. I've never had anybody be rude. I've never had anybody ask a question I didn't have the answer to. If I didn't maybe have the entire answer, then, I always get back to them, but that's happened so rarely. And as I've, made those calls over the months, my goal is when calling is to introduce myself, but it's also to just start to build that relationship. And I have taken things a little bit slower in building my business because I've wanted to really nurture those relationships with the realtors that I'm building. I don't sweat it. Well, there's no lists in front of me. There's no, besides a name and a phone number and maybe, who referred this realtor to me or whatever the story is, that's in front of me and that's it. So it's a huge
Right.
difference.
That's so good. Huge difference in sort of, and then what can you remember where it actually, you started thinking, hey, I can do this? Was there a point where you went from, because anybody that starts doing prospecting, if you haven't got a strong background in sales, you get uncomfortable. And even if you're good at it, when you started again, like going back to the gym after you have not trained for a while, it's like, oh, I'm a little uncomfortable. Now it comes back quickly.
Yeah. It's muscle
walk
memory.
me through. Yeah. Muscle memory. So how long do you think before you actually felt like, hey, wait a second, I got this?
I think it was the moment I realized that I don't have to be perfect. I had this, putting a lot of pressure on myself to be perfect right from the beginning. And I kind of tried to look at it from the perspective of when you get on a call with somebody, do you ever expect them to be perfect? No.
No.
What I would like from somebody is for them to be real. If they, stumble over the words, or if they, something happens, something real happens, I want them to be able to laugh at
The
themselves.
dog starts barking in the background or whatever. It's just like, it doesn't matter.
Totally, right?
Right.
Like, I like the humanness of it, and I appreciate that more than the fake, um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
perfect pitch, right? And so the moment
Yeah.
that it got better for me was when I realized that, you know, rocking those mistakes, or those little, human things that happen, um, really was working in my favor ultimately. And it was like this weight got lifted off my shoulders, and I it's like, you can do what you do and be who you are, and you
And you'll
know,
attract the right people. And
right.
the people that aren't, that's okay. They're not your people.
Totally, absolutely. So that
Yeah.
was that was a
I
big
remember
shift.
okay. I got a couple of things I'm going to ask about specifically. One, you messaged me one time. You had said you were asking about, you had something you wanted to share about your past, like your training background or something. Do you remember that? And then, so tell me about like what went through your head. Cause I had said, post, if it's you, like be real, like post it. If you're into whatever, cats, guitars, like training people, like I find the most engaged content is the stuff that's not work related. Like if we're talking
Totally.
about social stuff. So maybe share with me what kind of went through your head, and then what's been as you start to flex into that more, being like just showing more aspects of your person, not just being, hey, Bank of Canada said that, and those are things
Right.
are
Oh,
okay, but
right. Yeah.
you can't just be that, right?
No, no. I think I've messaged you twice on that. The first time was, I coming into this business, I had this like vision of what like a mortgage broker should look like. You know, I have
Right.
tattoos. I have lots of tattoos. So I think that was like my first question to you, was like, should I be, should I lean into it, or should I, be kind of tone it down, try to like play the middle road.
Like, yeah,
And you were like, absolutely not. Lean into who you are. If you have tattoos, like, you're not going to change that. If somebody doesn't want to work with you
yeah,
because you have tattoos, then so be it. Like, it's
yeah.
next. So I think that was a big shift for me, because, I kind of also realized that I can do this, and I can be like transparently and genuinely myself. And that just made everything even better. And so the other side of that is, I have a past in bodybuilding. I competed for 15 years in figure, did fitness modeling. And, a lot of those pictures aren't the most conservative pictures. But I worked really hard for them. I've won competitions, placed top 5 internationally. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the work ethic that it took to get there.
But
And
it takes a ton of discipline, diet, train. Like it's not easy. Like
it's all
anybody,
consuming.
yeah, yeah,
And
100%.
and it does relate to what I'm doing now, because it's what I'm doing now is, I wouldn't say all encompassing, but when you're building a business, that has to be my priority. Just like any goal takes the forefront of,
Yeah.
your thoughts, and, if you're hungry to build and be successful. So um, I find a big comparison. Yes, I'm not in the gym, I'm able to eat what I want now, but um, the structure, the routine, the habit building,
Right.
the
The
not only
doing the thing that you know you need to do, even when you don't feel like it, because there's time, I'm sure, when you're like, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to just, I don't know what, eat chicken and rice, or, call it broccoli and
yeah,
rice, chicken.
yeah,
What did you
whatever,
eat, by
yeah.
the way, to keep because you had to be really low carbs, right?
Oh yeah, no, and I'd go. My first competition was 2003, and I did 8 weeks of chicken and veggies, and that's it.
Right. Do you still
And
eat chicken today, or you can't do anymore? You're like, I'm done with chicken.
I'm like, I cannot eat a reheated chicken breast. Like, there's just no way. Like,
That's funny.
so yeah, so
Uh,
there's some things, but I never got beef, so now I'm like more of a beef girl, I would say. But
right.
yeah,
Well, you're in Alberta, so like, hey, you gotta represent Alberta beef, right?
that's right. That's right.
So, yeah, my kids. So when we went through a phase, we were doing paleo diet, which is like low carb, and so I used to make my kids these almond flour pancakes every day, and I made them every day. And I literally, if I tried to, like, they are sick of them. They got sick of them. So, because I just was like every single day, I liked them. I was like, these are really simple. They were not a fan. And so, you can make yourself sick of something for
Oh,
sure.
for
That's
sure.
funny.
I used to like, if I found something that was, really I could eat easily, I would eat it till I couldn't even look at it again every day.
Mm,
So, um,
right. But sometimes this business is like that. You've got to do something that you don't, that starts to get a bit tiring, but you stick with it long enough to get the benefit from it, right?
and you know what? That's exactly it. Like, it's going through the motions. It's the habit, the routine of it. It's, picking up the phone when, I have other things going on in my life, and, I might not feel like it. Um, but ultimately, if you think about it, it's like I'm building a business, but I'm doing it to play the long game. And
Hmm.
you know and those habits, the second you fall out of the routine, it it's a slippery slope, right? You start making concessions that aren't maybe conducive as much to your goals, and you start, letting yourself slip, maybe skipping a game of phones, or, whatever it is that, you have to do
Yeah.
to build your business. And um it's the routine, the success. I think a big part of it is in the routine, and however that looks for somebody as an individual, but the routine is going to
Yeah,
be key.
everybody's, and it changes depending on the stage you're at in your business. So these things are not different for Jim Terlucas. He may be, it's the same. He's got to do a lot of stuff over and over again. I'd love you to share. So you recently went to a real estate event, and you had some really, I thought, clever ideas around this. Maybe would you mind sharing kind of what worked for you when you did this event and kind of what the outcome was?
Yeah. So I think it was probably about 6 weeks ago now. A friend of mine, it came up on the social media. It's just like a realtor networking event. And so I had the date set. It was on a Thursday of this week. Um, so my initial strategy was just to make a list of the realtors that I thought would be going, um, through my social media. And I went through and messaged them and said, "Hey, I'm going to this event. Um, I wanted to see if you're going. If you are going, I want to make sure that, I stop and say hi, and get to say hi to you, or, however I exactly worded it, depending on the realtor." And then two things kind of happened from that. I It opened up a dialogue with everybody. So I either got,
Even the
"Hey,
ones
yeah,
that weren't going, because some of them
right."
were like, no, I'm not going, but it created a conversation, right?
Totally. And then that's just it. They said, "Oh, no, I'm not going." I'm like, "Oh, too bad. It's always nice to meet people face to face." And that would lead me into, "Hey, and sometimes they would offer to meet either for coffee or do a video call, or I would offer." And, just to kind of sidetrack the amount of, I think I did 7 meetings total from just the people who said they weren't going to go outside of the event.
That you invited to go to an event that you didn't pay for, that you didn't host, that you just were going to, and it was a real estate agent event. I think that's absolutely genius.
Yeah. And then, of course,
Yeah.
then there was the ones that said they were going, and I made a list in my phone, and some of them were, you know, they're warm because they're on my social media, but they're not people, people look different than their pictures. So I went through and I put a picture beside their name in my notes. So I made sure, like, I had already told these realtors that I was going to stop and say hello. I better stop and say
Yeah.
hello. The last thing I want to do is walk right past one of them. Right. So,
Right.
so that was, and that I didn't ask, I didn't try to sell myself. All I did at the event was get to know people, build rapport.
Connect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wasn't going into it asking for anything. I just, I wanted people to see who I was. Um, and just as much as I wanted to see who they were. It's easy. It's totally different when people are, and that would be my alarm. um,
No problem.
yeah. And yeah, it's totally different. When you meet people over screen versus in person. In person, you get, feel their energy. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm a quick judge of that. So after I did that, the day of the event, I connected with so many people. I talked to as many people as I could. Um, it was an exhausting day, but it was really fantastic. And so that was
Hmm.
on a Thursday. Friday, um, because when I ended kind of that like face to face exchange with the realtors at the event, I'd said, I'll send you a message. Let's touch base. Let's catch up, or let's, a casual mention of reconnecting. And so I did. That's
Yeah.
the Friday and the Saturday. That's what I did. And I ended up, I think I did 10 realtor meetings from that. Um, and
Wow.
then I did two that were they're realtors I know from years ago. And they, so, I know them to say hello, but I don't know them in this industry. And so
Yeah.
one of the things I asked them, I said, I want to do things differently than, traditional mortgage brokers. Do you mind if we sit down and I just pick your brain? I'll share what I'm doing. And I just want to know what your pain points are. And so I just approached it from a completely different angle, because
Yes.
I
That's
did
so
want their
good.
feedback. I wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that the value I'm providing is actually going to be valuable to them. So that really,
Hmm.
all those conversations just reinforced that, doing following the path that I should. But the one interesting thing I will say is one of the realtors that said no, and I actually met with her, I did a video call with her before the event. She gave me a list of realtors that she thought, other realtors, just names that she thought I would work well with. And so I called one of them, and he was in his office and he said, "Oh, hey, Angela, do you mind? I'm with, a few other realtors. Do you mind if I put you on speakerphone?" So he was in a room. There are four realtors. And of course, I like, oh, my first reaction, but, you know, yeah, I'll quit. Let's do it. And so, I ended up talking to the four of them for like, 40 minutes or so. And um, that I've got so many leads from just like that one moment, and that the realtor
Wow.
who put me on speaker sent me 6 leads this week. 6 really
Right.
great leads that they're actively out shopping and need to be pre-approved. So,
So I want to just this is a perfect way to wrap up this podcast. So at the beginning, your first call you make is you forget your email, you forget your own email address, which is funny. And then fast forward to a few months later by putting in the reps and the effort, and can, you now get put on a speaker call, which is definitely more intimidating because you don't know what you can't read their tone and stuff. And you turn that into an amazing opportunity. But that only happened because you put yourself out there. It only happened because you had to build up to that. It couldn't have we dropped you on day one, that would be really hard to do
I would have been
if
like,
it was your
fake the
first
call
day.
drop.
Yeah. You'd be like,
Or,
click, where'd you go? Oh, I
yeah,
lost you. Right.
yeah,
Like, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
That's
It's been
incredible. I love that. That's such a cool story of just your journey. And this is why I wanted you to share it. Cause I think that there's people listening, I know, that go, well, I don't know if I could do this. You didn't have a sales background. You just realize that you're going to have to do be uncomfortable for a while. It does change, just so you know. Eventually, if you have a good process, it will generate a lot of business for you and your past clients. But I'm so proud of how you're doing everything. It's so amazing, Angela. So like,
thank you.
kudos to you for that.
I really appreciate
What would
that.
you say to somebody right now that's listening and maybe they're struggling with, wanting to pick up the phone or wanting to do the prospecting, even though they know they should do it? What would you, or maybe to make it less pressure, what would you say to yourself? Let's say Angela today can go back and talk to Angela when she started. What would be your advice you'd give yourself?
Um, I wish I knew that I didn't have to be perfect. I still don't try to be perfect. I try to be the best I can. So I wish I had have really understood that the beauty of it is in being real. It's okay that you're scared. When you're calling realtors, they've been in your shoes. So they know what it's like
Hmm.
they know it's challenging to make those calls. So, um, you aren't talking to people who don't understand. You are talking to people who get it. Um, but I wish I was able to embrace kind of the journey of it a little bit more, instead of, just trying to, well, first trying to do it my way, because that did nothing for my business.
Hmm.
And, doing what people have done ahead of me and had success, I've kind of made it my own in the process, and that's how it'll be for everybody. But being okay
Yeah.
to fail, being okay to laugh at yourself, all of those things. And even when it comes to posting on social, the same goes. A lot of people don't want to put themselves out there on social media, but embracing all of that is I wish that I had known that, because I think I would have, embraced being uncomfortable a lot sooner. Um, it's yeah, I just, it's okay to laugh at yourself, and ultimately it's okay to, you're not in, all those little mistakes are making you better. All of that made me realize
Right.
that
Yeah.
I'm still here. I'm still getting referrals. I am still building a business. And the best part is I'm
Yeah.
building a business working with people I like working with and I get excited
Right.
about.
That's so good. Right. When they call, you're not like, oh, I got to talk to this person.
Right. Like I
I heard a
genuinely,
quote the other. Yeah.
I'm happy to hear from
I heard a
them.
quote the
I
other day
want
that
to
I
help.
think you'll like. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. It
No, no.
was, I'm excited with this quote, obviously. It said, why is it that the only place that failure is acceptable is in the gym? So in the gym, you go to failure is how you make the muscle grow, right?
Yep.
But everywhere else in life, we don't embrace that as quickly as you do. Somebody who trains goes, yeah, I know that if I don't push myself close to failure in the gym, or is, really close, I'm not going to get as much out of it. But I
100%.
thought that was really interesting.
I wish there was a
Yeah.
better word than failure. And I think, you know, uh, I think just society associates failure with, something negative. But if there was a better
Right.
word, I don't know what that would be, but, just to be able to compare it. But yes, it's truly like anything worth having is on the other side of struggle, adversity, and, I honestly, and I've said this, to the people around me I am proud of myself on a daily basis. And I don't
So good.
know at any point in my life where I've ever felt like that. So
But that's so cool.
and I have
Yeah.
accomplished a lot, but I don't feel about that I feel about it now. So it's
Right. That's cool. Well, you're only getting started, I'd say. And just wait, give you another few, be like, oh my gosh, there's levels. There's another level, Scott. I'll be like, I know, it's amazing. You're going
yeah,
to there's the
I
next
can't
thing that
wait.
you'll get to. And so, yeah. So I love this conversation. Thank you, Angela. Where can people find you online if they're looking for you?
I'm on Instagram, Mortgages by Angela, and my website, www.mortgagesbyangela.com. And on Facebook, Angela Robinson. And those are the
Okay. Well,
main
yeah,
spots.
this was so fun.
I
Thank you for
thank you
sharing
for
your
having
story. I really
me.
appreciate it.
I'm happy to share, and I'm happy to um, be here. Thank you.
Hey, thanks again for listening. And hopefully you were inspired by her conversation. I know that I'm absolutely so proud of how she's doing and what she's been doing, accomplishing in her business by just showing up every day and doing the activities. And now, the first problem most mortgage brokers have is I got to get leads. Now her problem is, oh my gosh, I have so many leads. How do I keep my prospecting up and not feel like I'm drowning? And that is a wonderful new problem to have. I always say pressure is a privilege. And so thanks again, Angela, for having a conversation with us. Also, as I always say, there's no problem in your mortgage business that someone else hasn't already solved. Your problem is finding a solution when you need it. And this podcast is designed to provide some of those solutions. Thanks for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.